He became the alien queen's husband by fate, and destiny drew him into her world. Eli had always felt a little out of place on Earth. Even though he was just 28, he had spent most of his life tinkering with machines, studying the stars and dreaming of worlds far beyond the skies above. Unlike most of his friends, he didn't spend his evenings at parties or crowded cafes. Instead, he preferred the hum of his small workshop, the soft glow of monitors, and the thrill of solving impossible problems. His latest project was the most ambitious yet, a deep space communication array designed to send messages across light years. It was quiet in the lab that night. The lights were dim, casting long shadows on the walls cluttered with blueprints, tools, and half-finished inventions. Eli's fingers moved quickly, adjusting circuits and fine-tuning the antennae. He had promised himself that tonight he would test the array for the first time. It might not work. He knew the odds were against him. But he had spent months preparing, and the thought of sending a signal that could travel across the galaxy filled him with both excitement and fear. He activated the array. A low hum began, growing louder as energy surged through the wires. Eli adjusted the controls, watching the readings spike. Then, without warning, a strange ripple of light passed through the lab. The screens flickered, numbers and symbols dancing across them in patterns Eli had never seen. He froze. Something was coming back. The signal was not like anything he had sent. It was intelligent, deliberate. The glowing array pulsed as if responding to him, calling to him. Before he could react, the light intensified. A sudden force pulled at him, lifting him off the floor. Panic surged through him. He tried to let go of the controls, but the pull was too strong. Then everything went black. When Eli opened his eyes, he was no longer in his lab. He was lying on a smooth, cool surface under a sky that shimmered with strange colors. Two suns hung in the sky, casting light in shades of pink and gold. Towering structures surrounded him, unlike anything he had ever seen on Earth. Their shapes twisted in ways that defied geometry, with glowing veins of energy running along their surfaces. The air smelled crisp and metallic, yet strangely clean. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding. The silence was broken by movement in the distance. A figure approached. It was tall and graceful, with shimmering skin that seemed to change colors in the sunlight. Its eyes were large and golden, intelligent and piercing. Eli froze. The being stopped a few meters away, tilting its head, studying him. "You are human," it said, its voice soft but commanding. The words were perfect English, though they carried a melodic undertone that was unfamiliar. Yes," Eli stammered. "I'm Eli. I don't know how I got here." The being's lips curved into a small, amused smile. "You came through the stars. The signal you sent was not merely heard, it was answered. You have been brought to Zythera." "Zythera?" Eli echoed. He glanced around, feeling both awe and fear. I don't understand. Where is this?" "It is a world far from your home. You are no longer on Earth." The being's eyes narrowed slightly, studying him as if weighing something. "You are here by fate, and by fate you will meet the one you are destined to stand beside." Eli's mind raced. "Stand beside who?" "You will see," the being said, stepping back. "Come." Eli followed, unsure of what else he could do. The being led him through towering gates made of crystal and light. They passed other figures, some curious, others indifferent, all looking at him with a mixture of surprise and calculation. Eli could feel their intelligence, their awareness, the subtle energy in the way they moved. These were not ordinary creatures. They were advanced, and he realized that every instinct he had about danger was true. He was completely out of his element. Eventually, they arrived at a central palace that rose higher than any building on Earth. It pulsed with light from within, casting patterns across the surrounding city. Eli's guide stopped and gestured for him to enter. Inside, the air shimmered, and walls seemed alive, flowing with energy in patterns that made his head spin. At the heart of the palace, on a raised platform, sat a figure whose presence demanded attention. She was tall, elegant, and regal, with golden eyes that seemed to see everything. Her hair shimmered with colors Eli couldn't name. She wore robes of flowing light that moved as if alive. Eli felt a strange mix of fear and fascination. This was the queen, the alien Queen Lysera. "Eli of Earth," she said, her voice deep and melodic, echoing in the chamber. "You have come far. Few humans have ever reached my world." I didn't mean to," Eli stammered. "I was just sending a signal." Lysera's gaze softened slightly, though her presence remained commanding. Fate does not always follow intention. You are here for a reason. The stars themselves whispered of your coming. Eli blinked. The stars? Yes, a human such as you is rare, unpredictable, clever. Your kind survives against odds that no other species can endure. That is why you are here. Eli's mind spun. He had always thought humans were ordinary, fragile, even insignificant on a galactic scale. Yet here, this alien queen, ruler of a powerful species, spoke of human strength as if it were legendary. Before he could respond, the palace doors opened, and several figures entered. They were advisors and nobles, their forms elegant and precise, their expressions curious, some skeptical. They studied Eli like a strange artifact. "This human is to be our guest," Lysera said, her tone firm. "He will remain in the palace until we understand the purpose of his arrival." Murmurs filled the chamber. Eli felt the weight of their stares. He had read about alien civilizations, about humans being underestimated or dismissed. Now he understood. Every alien here expected him to fail, to be insignificant. Eli swallowed. He had always relied on his mind to solve problems, on his ability to think quickly and adapt. Maybe, he thought, that was what would help him survive here. Days passed, though time felt different on Scythera. Eli learned their ways slowly, observing and listening, trying to understand their language, their customs, their logic. The palace was a labyrinth of knowledge, filled with artifacts and devices that challenged every law of physics he had known. At first, he made mistakes, touching things he shouldn't, misreading cues, causing small accidents. Each time, he feared he would be dismissed or worse. But he also noticed something remarkable. The aliens were fascinated by human unpredictability. His mistakes were not merely seen as errors, they were puzzles, questions, opportunities. Where an alien might follow rules perfectly, humans could improvise, react in ways the most advanced algorithms could not predict. One evening, during a demonstration of a device that controlled localized gravity fields, a minor malfunction caused a sudden surge of energy. Aliens stepped back, cautious, their complex devices threatening to collapse under the strain. Eli acted on instinct. He grabbed a control module and rerouted energy through an improvised path, stabilizing the system just before it could fail completely. The chamber went silent. The nobles exchanged whispers. Lysera's eyes widened slightly, and she regarded him in a way that was no longer merely curious. It was measured respect. "You are clever," she said simply. Eli felt a rush of relief and pride. For the first time, he realized that human ingenuity could be seen as a force in the galaxy, not a weakness. Over the next few days, he continued to demonstrate subtle but profound ways in which human thinking could complement alien technology. Small, simple ideas, rerouting power, adjusting frequencies, creating patterns of energy flow that no alien had considered. Each time he saw a shift in perception, a quiet acknowledgement that humans were not as fragile or insignificant as they appeared. And then one night, he looked up at the twin moons of Scythera, shining against a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. He felt a strange connection, as if the stars themselves were watching him, guiding him. Fate had brought him here. Destiny had drawn him into this alien world. He did not yet know why. He did not yet know what his role would be. But for the first time in his life, he felt that being human, his curiosity, his courage, his imperfections, was something remarkable, something powerful. And somewhere in the depths of the palace, Queen Lysera was watching him, wondering just how far this human might go. Eli woke to the soft glow of Scythera's twin suns spilling across the palace floor. Though he had begun to understand some of the alien routines, every day brought new surprises, new challenges, and a lingering sense that he was constantly being tested. He still did not fully understand why fate had drawn him here, yet he could feel the pull of something greater. Breakfast in the palace was unlike anything Eli had known. The dining hall floated in a vast chamber, its walls shimmering with energy patterns that shifted like living art. A group of Scytheran nobles sat around a long, curved table, their skin glowing faintly in the sunlight. They watched him with a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and expectation. Eli's stomach tightened. He had learned quickly to remain polite and attentive, but he could sense their judgment in every glance. "You are ready for today's session?" one of the advisors asked. Her voice was crisp, precise, and layered with a musical undertone that made it sound as though each word carried multiple meanings. Eli nodded. He wasn't sure what he had to be ready for, but he had learned that saying yes was safer than hesitation. The session took him through vast chambers filled with alien technology, some of it floating, some projected as holographic images that twisted in impossible dimensions. The nobles demonstrated devices that could manipulate energy, gravity, and even time in controlled ways. Eli marveled at their complexity, but soon realized that their methods were rigid. Every experiment followed precise protocols, and any deviation was considered reckless. Eli had already seen the dangers of rigidity. He remembered the near failure of the energy demonstration the previous week, and how his improvisation had saved the chamber. Today, he noticed another instability in one of the energy conduits. The device hummed with an irregular pulse that no Scytheran seemed to recognize. He hesitated. Should he speak up, or should he wait and risk another accident? He chose to act. "Excuse me," Eli said, his voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in his chest. "I think the pulse is off. If we redirect a small part of the energy here," he pointed to a junction on the device, "it might stabilize the system." The chamber went silent. All eyes turned to him. The nobles exchanged glances that Eli could not interpret. Even Lysera, seated on a throne-like chair of glowing crystal, regarded him with quiet intensity. "And what makes you think a human can improve upon centuries of our knowledge?" one advisor demanded, her tone sharp, though not unkind. Eli swallowed. "I don't know your technology like you do," he admitted honestly, "but sometimes a new perspective can spot things that experience might overlook. I've worked with energy systems on Earth, and the principle is similar. If we reroute here," he explained carefully, showing a simple adjustment that any human engineer would understand, though the aliens might see it as unusual. Lysera's eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing. Eli quickly adjusted the junction, holding his breath. The energy pulse shifted, the conduit stabilized, the device's hum smoothed into a steady rhythm. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some nobles looked impressed, others skeptical. Eli felt a rush of relief, but he knew this was only the beginning. After the session, Lysera approached him privately. Her expression was unreadable. "You are bold," she said. "Most humans would never risk interfering with technology that is not theirs. Most humans would fail." "I guess humans can be stubborn," Eli replied with a small smile. "We're used to solving problems with whatever we have, even if it seems impossible." Lysera's lips curved in what might have been the closest thing to amusement he had seen from her. "Perhaps that is why the stars guided you here." In the following days, Eli's routine became more complex. He was introduced to alien etiquette, learning how to bow when to speak, and how to address the queen and her advisors. At first, he made small mistakes, mispronouncing words, misjudging distances in gestures, or accidentally triggering minor energy fields with his touch. Each time, a noble would glance disapprovingly, and Eli would apologize and correct himself. Yet slowly, he began to find a rhythm, a way to navigate their complex culture. More importantly, he began to notice the subtle ways in which human thinking differed from Scytheran logic. While the aliens approached every problem with strict rules, Eli relied on experimentation, intuition, and improvisation. At first, this frustrated the court. They viewed mistakes as dangerous. But gradually, they began to see that human unpredictability often produced solutions they could not anticipate. One afternoon, an unexpected challenge arose. A massive holographic projection displayed a simulation of Scythera's planetary energy network. A sudden surge threatened to destabilize several regions, and the nobles argued about the proper protocol to correct it. Eli stepped forward. "Wait," he said, "I think there's another way." Several nobles turned to him sharply. "Do not interfere," one warned. "This is dangerous." Eli ignored the caution. Using a combination of alien interface controls and his own understanding of systems engineering, he rerouted energy flows in a pattern that the simulation had not considered. Lights shifted, holograms adjusted, and the system stabilized. The chamber fell silent. Then Lysera spoke. "You see what humans can do when they are given room to act?" The other nobles hesitated. Some seemed reluctant to admit it, but Eli could sense the shift. The queen's faith in him was growing. His actions, small and calculated, were beginning to change the way the court viewed humanity. Eli began to explore the palace beyond the structured lessons. He wandered through halls lined with shimmering glass panels, each displaying a memory or recording of Scythera's history. He discovered a library of sorts, containing knowledge that stretched back thousands of years. Alien texts described wars, discoveries, and inventions far beyond human comprehension. Yet in every record, he noticed a common thread. The Zytherans admired intelligence and foresight, but creativity, especially when unpredictable, was considered a wild card. Eli realized something important. Humans might lack the precision of Zytheran training, but they could act in ways that no rigid logic could predict. He could be that wild card. One evening, Lysera invited him to a private discussion. She led him to a balcony overlooking the alien city, bathed in the glow of twin suns setting in pink and gold hues. "Eli," she began, her voice softer than usual, "you are not like other humans. You think, act, and adapt in ways that are remarkable. Yet you are still cautious, still restrained. Why?" Eli looked out at the city, his mind racing. "I guess I've always been careful," he said. "I don't know the rules here, the consequences, or even what might happen next, but I want to do the right thing. I don't want to fail." Lysera studied him silently. Finally, she said, "Sometimes humans succeed not because they understand everything, but because they refuse to give up. That is rare. That is why you are here." The next day brought a test of courage. A breach in one of the energy conduits occurred, threatening a section of the palace. The Zytheran engineers were hesitant, debating protocol, but Eli did not wait. He sprinted to the affected area, analyzing the problem. Using quick improvisation and a mix of alien technology and his own ingenuity, he stabilized the conduit before it could cause harm. Lysera watched from a distance, her golden eyes reflecting a mixture of pride and astonishment. "Your actions are not only clever but brave," she said. "It seems the prophecies were correct. Fate brought you here for a reason." By the end of the week, Eli was no longer merely a visitor. He had become an integral part of the palace, a symbol of human capability in a world that had never truly encountered anything like him. The nobles, some reluctantly, began to acknowledge that humans were more than fragile creatures. They were unpredictable, clever, and capable of feats that even the most advanced Zytheran minds could not foresee. Eli began to understand that his journey was not only about survival. It was about earning trust, proving the worth of humanity, and discovering the true role he was meant to play in this alien world. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and the growing realization that the Queen herself might come to rely on him in ways that could shape the destiny of Zythera. And late at night, when the palace was quiet and the twin moons cast gentle light across the gardens, Eli looked up at the alien stars and thought about home. Earth seemed distant now, yet he no longer felt fear or uncertainty. He had found purpose in this strange new world. Fate had brought him here, but it was his courage, ingenuity, and heart that would determine what came next. And somewhere in the palace, Queen Lysera was watching him, quietly calculating just how far this human could go, and what it would mean for her people when the true strength of humanity revealed itself. The calm Eli had begun to feel in the palace was shattered one morning when alarms echoed through the halls. The usually serene city of Zythera was on edge, the hum of energy flowing through the palace growing tense and erratic. Eli had been studying one of the smaller energy conduits when the warning lights flashed across the walls, red and pulsing. Something was wrong, something serious. Lysera arrived quickly, her golden eyes sharper than ever. "A fleet approaches," she said without hesitation. "They are unknown, but their trajectory is direct. They will reach the outskirts of the planet in less than 3 cycles." Eli's mind raced. He had seen simulations of battles in human history, and he understood strategy, but this was different. These were alien ships, advanced and unfamiliar, and Zythera had never faced such invaders so suddenly. Yet he felt a surge of clarity. Humans might be small and underestimated, but they had a gift for thinking under pressure, for adapting when all else seemed impossible. Lysera turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Your ingenuity will be tested. Are you prepared, human?" Eli nodded. "I'll do everything I can." The Queen moved to the central control chamber, and Eli followed. There he saw holographic projections of the incoming fleet, sleek, dark ships moving with terrifying precision. The Zytheran advisors debated rapidly, discussing shields, energy barriers, and weapons deployment. Every suggestion was measured and precise, yet Eli noticed one flaw. They were thinking within the rules of Zytheran technology, not considering the unpredictability of their enemy. I think I can help, Eli said, stepping forward. The council turned toward him, skeptical. If we alter the energy pulses in the outer shields, we can create patterns that confuse the attacker's sensors. They won't see where our defenses are weakest. One advisor shook her head. Human, that is reckless. It could destroy the shields entirely. Eli's voice was firm. Or it could save the planet. You don't have to follow my method exactly, but the enemy is counting on predictability. Humans and unpredictability go hand in hand. That's what we do best. Lysera studied him, her eyes glowing softly. Do it, she commanded. We will follow your guidance, but you take full responsibility. Eli's heart pounded, but he worked quickly, adjusting shield frequencies, rerouting energy flows, and creating intentional anomalies in the power matrix. The other Zytherans watched, tense, some whispering that he was risking everything. Yet, when the first wave of enemy ships arrived, the results were immediate. Their scanners failed to lock onto vital areas, their weapons fired into empty space, and the humans' unpredictability saved critical parts of the city from destruction. The invaders adapted quickly, forcing Eli to think even faster. He improvised, combining human logic with Zytheran technology, creating traps and diversions the aliens never expected. Each success strengthened his confidence, and he felt a thrill he had never known on Earth, the exhilaration of turning chaos into opportunity. Lysera observed silently, her eyes fixed on him. For the first time, she seemed unsure of how far a human could push the limits. The court, which had once dismissed him, now whispered among themselves, their tone mixed with admiration and disbelief. Hours passed like minutes. The invaders regrouped, attempting to bypass the city's outer defenses. Eli realized that direct confrontation was inevitable. We can't just keep confusing them, he said. We need a counterattack, something sudden, something they won't predict. Lysera tilted her head. Explain. Eli pointed to a cluster of ships in the projection. If we create a controlled collapse in the energy channel here, it will release a pulse that disables their systems temporarily. We can then target their command ship and force them to retreat. An advisor's voice trembled. That is too dangerous, one mistake and we could lose the city. Eli's voice was calm but insistent. I know the risk, but it's the only chance we have. I've calculated the energy flows carefully. We can control it. Lysera considered, then nodded. Do it, Eli. Show them the strength of humanity. With careful precision, Eli initiated the plan. Energy pulsed through the conduit, building to a controlled peak. The invaders' ships faltered, systems short-circuiting as intended. A concentrated strike from Zythera's weapons targeted the command ship, and with a shuddering roar, it was disabled. The remaining fleet, confused and leaderless, retreated into the stars. The council erupted into murmurs of disbelief and admiration. Lysera's gaze met Eli's, and for the first time he saw what could only be described as approval, tempered with awe. You have done what few of my people could, she said softly. Your mind is unlike anything I have ever seen. Humanity is not weak, it is remarkable. Eli felt a surge of pride, but he also felt exhaustion. He had pushed himself to the limit, combining his knowledge with instinct and creativity. And in doing so, he had begun to understand why he was brought here. Humans were not just survivors. They were wild cards, capable of turning the tide when logic and rules alone were insufficient. In the aftermath, the city began repairs, but the invaders' attack left lasting effects. Eli walked through the streets, observing how the Zytherans worked together to restore their homes. He noticed admiration in the eyes of those who had once doubted him, and everywhere he went, whispers of the human who had saved the city followed him. That night, Lysera summoned him to her private chambers. She stood by a window, looking out at the city bathed in the twin moon's gentle glow. Eli, she said, you risked yourself for a world that is not your own. Many humans would have fled, but you chose to act. That is why you are different. That is why you are here. Eli smiled, though his body ached from the day's events. I didn't do it for glory, he said. I did it because it had to be done, and I guess humans have a habit of rising to challenges, even impossible ones. Lysera's eyes softened. And that is why fate brought you to me. You have proven that humanity is more than a curiosity. It is a force. Perhaps in time you will show my people just how powerful and unpredictable your kind can be. Days passed, and the palace settled into a tense calm. Eli continued his lessons, but now they were different. The court listened to his suggestions, and Lysera included him in strategic discussions. He began to see alliances form, trust building in subtle ways. The human's reputation in Zythera had shifted from fragile novelty to essential force. But Eli knew this was only the beginning. The invaders had retreated, yes, but they had observed Zythera's defenses. He understood instinctively that they would return, more prepared and more dangerous. And when that day came, Zythera would need every ounce of human ingenuity and courage. One evening, Eli found himself in the palace gardens, gazing at the stars. The alien flora glowed softly, the air humming with gentle energy. He thought of Earth, of his small workshop, of the life he had once known. That life felt distant, almost unreal. Here on this alien world, he had discovered purpose, a chance to prove himself not just as a survivor, but as a hero. Lysera appeared beside him silently, her presence commanding yet comforting. "Do you fear what comes next?" she asked. Eli shook his head. "Not really. I know it won't be easy, but I've learned that humans can face what others think impossible. That's who we are, that's what I can offer this world." She studied him, her gaze unwavering. "You are extraordinary, Eli. You have changed the way my people see humanity. You have begun to fulfill a destiny that even I could not fully comprehend." Eli smiled faintly. "Destiny, it's a big word. I just try to do my best." "Your best is more than enough," she said, and for the first time her expression carried warmth. "Perhaps one day you will show me the full potential of your kind. Until then, I will trust you to guide us." In the following weeks, Eli continued to refine Zythera's defenses, introducing new strategies, improvising solutions, and teaching the court to think beyond rigid rules. Every success reinforced the message. Humans were not weak, not fragile, not insignificant. They were clever, resourceful, and courageous. And as the twin moons rose over the alien city, casting silver light across the palace towers, Eli felt a sense of belonging he had never known on Earth. He had been brought here by fate, yes, but it was his choices, his courage, and his mind that were beginning to shape the future of Zythera. The invaders might return, challenges would come. But Eli knew that when humans and Zytherans worked together, unpredictability could become their greatest weapon. And somewhere deep within the palace, Queen Lysera watched, knowing that the human at her side might just change the destiny of her world forever. The weeks after the attack passed in a tense calm. Eli had settled into a rhythm with the palace, assisting Lysera and the court with strategies, repairs, and innovations. Yet beneath the calm, he sensed that something deeper was at play, a hidden truth, a destiny that he had only begun to glimpse. One morning, Lysera summoned him to the Hall of Stars, a massive chamber where the ceiling displayed the entire galaxy in shifting lights. Eli had walked these halls many times before, but today the air felt heavier, charged with purpose. Lysera waited at the center, her golden eyes reflecting the stars above. "Eli," she said, "you have proven yourself remarkable, not only in thought but in courage. Yet there is something you must understand. The stars themselves speak of a greater challenge, a fate that cannot be avoided." Eli felt a chill run down his spine. He had always been curious, always eager to face challenges, but the word fate carried weight he had never known. "A greater challenge?" he asked cautiously. "What do you mean?" Lysera gestured toward the galactic map projected before them. "The fleet you faced was only a test. They are scouts sent by a larger force that has been watching Zythera. They are patient, calculating, and far more dangerous. The stars have whispered that this force seeks to conquer, not negotiate. And in this, your role is crucial." Eli stared at the projection, trying to make sense of the numbers, trajectories, and alien symbols. His mind raced. On Earth, he had dealt with challenges in simulations or in small-scale experiments. Here, the stakes were real. Lives, civilizations, the safety of a world. And somehow a human, him, was central to the solution. "Why me?" he asked, almost whispering. "I'm just me." Lysera's gaze softened, but it remained intense. "Because humans have qualities that cannot be predicted or calculated. Courage, improvisation, empathy, and a stubborn refusal to surrender to impossible odds. You see obstacles as challenges to solve, not barriers to fear. That is why you were brought here." Eli exhaled slowly, the weight of the statement pressing on him. He had always thought humans were ordinary, fragile, even insignificant. But here, in this alien world, he was seeing himself through a lens of possibility, potential, and responsibility that he had never imagined. Over the next few cycles, Eli worked tirelessly to prepare Zythera for the impending threat. He analyzed alien technology, studied strategies, and combined his own knowledge of human problem-solving with Zytheran systems. The court watched in awe as he suggested unconventional solutions, energy patterns that defied normal logic, defensive maneuvers that exploited unpredictability, and strategic diversions that could save entire regions from harm. Yet even as he worked, Eli faced doubts. Could a human truly make a difference in a war fought with powers beyond earthly comprehension? Could he survive if the enemy came? These questions haunted him, but he could not dwell on fear. He had learned that humans thrived in action, not hesitation. One evening, Lysera approached him as he studied a complex energy map. "Eli," she said, her voice quieter than usual, "there is something more you must understand. The fate that binds you to Zythera is not only about skill or courage, it is about choice. You will be called upon to make a decision that could change everything, for you, for my people, and perhaps for the galaxy." Eli looked up startled. "A choice? What kind of choice?" "You will see," Lysera replied. "But know this, your decision must come from who you are, not who others expect you to be. Humans often surprise us because they act from instinct, from courage, from ingenuity. You must trust yourself in the same way." The following day, the warning came. A pulse detected from deep space signaled the arrival of the larger force. This fleet was unlike the scouts they had faced before, massive ships, layered with defenses, weapons of unimaginable power. The Zytheran Council debated endlessly, paralyzed by their fear of loss. Eli knew that hesitation would cost them dearly. He stepped forward. "We can't rely on their rules," he said firmly. "We have to think differently. We have to use what humans do best, unpredictability and quick thinking. We can't fight them like they expect. We have to be clever, not just strong." Lysera regarded him with a mixture of pride and concern. "And you believe humanity can do what my people alone cannot?" Eli nodded. "I do, not alone, but with you, with your technology, with your people. Humans aren't just survivors. We solve problems no one else can. If we act together, we can turn this in our favor." The council hesitated, then Lysera spoke. "Very well, Eli, you will lead the strategy for our defenses. The humans' methods will guide our actions." For the first time, Eli felt the full weight of responsibility. This was not a simulation, not a test. This was real. Lives, cities, and a civilization depended on his decisions. Yet alongside fear was clarity. He had learned to trust human intuition, to adapt, to improvise. That was his greatest strength. Days turned into a tense preparation. Eli worked alongside engineers, strategists, and warriors, blending human ingenuity with Zytheran precision. He designed defensive systems that mimicked randomness, creating false targets, unpredictable energy flows, and concealed countermeasures. He trained squads in tactics that were alien yet logical when explained with human reasoning. And then the choice arrived. Eli discovered a vulnerability in the enemy fleet, a risk that no Zytheran had noticed. If exploited, it could disable the entire armada before it reached Zythera. But it required a human hand in the most critical moment. Eli himself would have to go aboard a captured scout ship, navigate its systems, and manually trigger the sequence. Failure meant death. Success meant victory for Zythera. Lysera confronted him. "Eli, this is your choice. You can refuse and we will find another way, though I fear none may succeed. Or you can act, risking everything. What will you do?" Eli's mind raced. Fear rose, but so did determination. He thought of Earth, of human ingenuity, of the times his species had survived against impossible odds. He remembered the energy conduit, the invaders, first attack, and the trust Lysera had placed in him. This was more than bravery, it was destiny, the moment he had been brought to Zythera for. "I'll do it," he said firmly. "I'll go." The preparations were swift. Eli studied the captured scout ship, learning its alien systems. He adapted his human knowledge to work with Zytheran technology, creating solutions on the fly. Every wire, every energy pulse, every mechanism had to be understood. Failure was not an option, yet he found a strange exhilaration in the challenge. Lysera stood beside him before departure. "You are extraordinary," she said softly. "No human has ever done what you are about to attempt, yet I have no doubt that you will succeed. Trust yourself, Eli, as I trust you." Eli nodded. "I won't let you down." He boarded the ship, and as it launched toward the enemy fleet, he felt a mixture of fear and clarity. This was the moment he had been preparing for, the moment where human ingenuity, courage, and determination would be tested. He analyzed the systems, adapting alien technology with human intuition. The enemy ships moved with predictable precision, and he exploited it with calculated improvisation. Every second was critical. The ship's controls responded partially to human manipulation, requiring constant adjustments. Energy flows needed to be rerouted, shields timed perfectly, and power sequences executed in a rhythm that no alien could anticipate. Eli worked tirelessly, combining logic and instinct, strategy and creativity. Then the moment arrived. He triggered the vulnerability he had discovered, sending a pulse through the enemy fleet. Systems malfunctioned, ships faltered, weapons misfired. Zythera's defenses struck with precision, and the armada began to retreat, leaderless and confused. Eli's heart pounded as he navigated the ship back to Zythera. The city below shimmered with energy as defenses stabilized. The council erupted in quiet celebration, admiration, and astonishment. He had done the impossible. Back on the planet, Lysera met him at the landing site. Her golden eyes glimmered with pride. "You chose courage over fear," she said. "You acted not because it was expected, but because it was necessary. Humans are more than I imagined. You are more than I imagined." Eli smiled, exhausted but fulfilled. "I just did what had to be done, and I guess humans can do remarkable things when they try." Lysera's expression softened. "Indeed, and this choice, this courage, has proven what the stars whispered. Humanity is a force that cannot be ignored. Zythera owes its survival to you, Eli. And perhaps more importantly, the galaxy will come to recognize the strength of your kind." That night, Eli walked through the palace gardens, watching the twin moons reflect in the pools of water. He thought of Earth, of his small workshop, and the life he had left behind. He realized that fate had drawn him to Zythera not just to survive, but to show the galaxy what humans were capable of. Lysera appeared beside him, silent and graceful. "Eli," she said, "you have made a choice that will be remembered for generations. You accepted responsibility when others might have hesitated. That is the essence of humanity. That is why you are destined to stand beside me, and why your presence will shape the future of my world." Eli looked at her, the weight of destiny settling in his chest. He understood now that fate was not a command. It was a call, and he had answered. And in answering, he had proven that humans were not fragile, not predictable, not insignificant. They were brilliant, courageous, and capable of shaping the destiny of worlds. The twin moons shone down on Zythera, the city peaceful for the moment, yet alive with energy. Eli felt a sense of belonging he had never known on Earth. He had been brought here by fate, guided by destiny, and it was his courage, intelligence, and heart that had allowed him to meet that call. And somewhere deep within the palace, Queen Lysera watched, knowing that the human who had faced impossible odds had not only saved her people, but had also begun to reveal the true power of humanity, a force that even the stars themselves had foretold. The celebration in Zythera began the moment Eli returned from the scout ship. Word spread quickly through the city. A human had turned the tide of a battle that could have destroyed their world. The streets were filled with glowing banners, alien citizens moving with excitement and awe, their voices blending into a melody of gratitude and astonishment. For the first time, humanity's name carried weight across the stars, and Eli, once an outsider, had become a symbol of hope. The palace, too, was alive with energy. Lysera moved through the halls with a quiet pride, yet her golden eyes betrayed thoughtfulness. The court, who had once doubted him at every turn, now sought his counsel on everything, from defense strategies to governance. Eli felt the strange thrill of influence, the realization that his presence here mattered not just for survival, but for shaping the future of an entire civilization. As he walked through the palace gardens that evening, the twin moons reflected off the crystal-clear pools, bathing the world in silver light. Eli took a deep breath, letting the calm of the night wash over him. He had faced danger, acted with courage, and seen human ingenuity recognized in a world far beyond his own. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. Leadership, responsibility, and trust were not things granted. They were earned continuously, and he intended to continue earning them. Lysera approached silently, her presence commanding yet comforting. "Eli," she said, her voice softer than it had ever been, "you have done what few could have imagined. You have faced the impossible, made the hard choices, and proven the strength of humanity. The Council and my people now see what I have known all along. Humans are not to be underestimated. Eli shook his head, a small smile forming on his lips. I'm not a hero, he said. I just do what needs to be done. That's what humans do. We survive, adapt, and find solutions when there's no obvious answer. Lysera's eyes softened. And that is why you are extraordinary, not because of strength or power, but because of courage, ingenuity, and heart, traits that, though common among humans, are rare in the galaxy. Over the following cycles, Eli worked closely with the court to establish a new system of defense and cooperation. He trained squads of Scytheran engineers and strategists in human methods of problem-solving, flexible thinking, improvisation, and unconventional approaches to challenges. The Council initially hesitated, but they quickly realized that Eli's strategies worked in ways traditional methods could not. News of his deeds traveled far beyond Scythera. Other civilizations, once dismissive of humans, began to reconsider their judgments. Humans were no longer seen as fragile creatures limited to one small planet. They were clever, adaptable, and capable of feats that could rival the most advanced species. Eli had not just saved a world, he had begun to rewrite humanity's reputation across the galaxy. Yet even with his growing influence, Eli remained humble. He walked among the citizens, observing their lives, listening to their concerns, and learning about their world. He discovered that Scythera's strength lay not only in technology, but in cooperation and unity, and he sought ways to combine human unpredictability with alien structure. He found joy in small moments, a child laughing as energy flowers bloomed in the gardens, citizens marveling at displays of controlled energy, and the quiet nights when he could reflect on his own journey. One evening, as Eli worked in the palace workshop, Lysera entered. She carried a small, glowing device in her hands, a relic of Scythera's ancestors, infused with knowledge of past rulers. Eli, she said, placing it before him, this belongs to the leader of my people. It symbolizes guidance, responsibility, and wisdom. I wish to offer it to you not as a human among aliens, but as my partner, my equal. Eli stared, astonished. Me, a human? Lysera nodded. Yes, you have shown the qualities that matter most: courage, intelligence, adaptability, and compassion. You have earned a place beside me not by birth or prophecy alone, but through your actions and choices. Will you accept this? Eli's mind raced. He thought of Earth, of his home, of the life he had left behind. Yet he also thought of the people he had grown to respect, the bonds he had formed, and the trust Lysera had placed in him. He realized that this was not just an honor, it was a responsibility he was ready to embrace. I accept, he said, voice steady despite the emotion surging within him. I'll stand beside you not because of destiny alone, but because it is right and because I can help. Lysera smiled, a rare warmth crossing her features. Then let it be so. In the days that followed, preparations for a formal ceremony began. Citizens gathered in the Grand Plaza, their eyes filled with wonder at the human who had become part of their royal world. Eli felt a mix of pride and humility as he moved through the crowds, offering guidance, encouragement, and a steady hand wherever it was needed. He was no longer an outsider. He was part of something greater, a bridge between humanity and Scythera. On the day of the ceremony, Eli stood beside Lysera before a council of thousands. The twin suns cast a golden glow over the plaza, reflecting off the crystalline towers and the shimmering energy fields that surrounded the city. Lysera addressed the crowd. Citizens of Scythera, she began, we have faced threats that tested our strength, our wisdom, and our courage. But today, we honor a being who has shown that true power lies not in technology alone, but in courage, ingenuity, and the heart. Eli, a human, has proven that our world can thrive when we embrace unexpected allies and trust in the unseen potential of the universe. A wave of awe swept through the crowd. Eli felt a hand brush against his shoulder. He looked at Lysera, her golden eyes glowing with pride. He understood then that this was not merely recognition. It was acceptance, respect, and trust. As the ceremony concluded, Eli reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He remembered the lab on Earth, the deep space signal that had pulled him through the wormhole, and the fear that had gripped him when he first faced the unknown. He remembered the court, the trials, the first attack, and the moment he had chosen courage over fear. Every step had led to this, the recognition of humanity's worth, the respect of a civilization far beyond Earth, and a bond with a queen who saw him as more than a human outsider. Lysera turned to him as the crowd dispersed. "You have changed my world, Eli. And in doing so, you have changed the perception of humans across the galaxy. You have earned a place not only at my side, but in the history of Scythera itself." Eli smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "I only did what I had to do." Humanity's strength is not in power alone. It's in courage, creativity, and the willingness to act when others hesitate. That's what I've tried to show. Lysera reached for his hand. "And you have succeeded beyond measure. Together, we will guide Scythera and perhaps the galaxy toward a future where humans are seen for what they truly are. A force to be reckoned with, a partner in shaping worlds." As the twin moons rose, casting a silver glow over the city, Eli looked out across the alien horizon. He saw towers, gardens, and citizens, all thriving in the aftermath of chaos. He saw a future filled with challenges, discoveries, and opportunities, and he understood that the journey had only begun. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, but here on Scythera, their potential had been revealed. Eli, once an ordinary engineer on a distant planet, had become a symbol of that potential. His courage, ingenuity, and determination had not only saved a world, but had inspired a civilization to see humans in a new light. And as he stood beside Lysera, feeling the warmth of her hand and the weight of responsibility, Eli knew that destiny had brought him here for a reason. Not to dominate, not to command, but to show the universe the true power of humanity, to survive, to adapt, and to rise when the odds seemed impossible. The stars above shimmered, as if acknowledging the truth that Eli had come to embrace. Humanity was no longer small. Humans were clever, brave, and unpredictable. And now, in a world far beyond Earth, their worth had been proven. The galaxy would remember Eli, not as a human who stumbled into an alien world, but as a bridge between worlds, a symbol of courage and ingenuity, and a testament to the extraordinary potential that lay within humanity. And somewhere in the quiet of the palace, Lysera watched him with admiration and trust, knowing that together they had begun a new chapter, not only for Scythera but for the galaxy, and for humans who would one day follow in Eli's footsteps, proving again and again that when humanity rises, nothing is impossible.